In today's tutorial, I am working in my prompt journal and I am going to use my designer coffee filters to create the background. I'm also going to turn a home decor item that was ready to go into the garbage into a stamp. This is what happens when you ask yourself, I wonder if. So these Inukshooks were from a wind chime. It was all tangled up. I cut it apart. And before I threw this out, I thought, can I use it? I flipped through my art journal prompts and came across the prompt signpost. And I thought, well, that's the meaning of the Inukshuk. They mark the way, they show the way, they say, we were here. So I thought that was a good match for it. I opened up my prompt journal, found the page that I dedicated for either or prompt, and then I'm playing with it on the page. And I'm quite comfortable with the fact that I could probably get 3 of these Inukshooks on this page. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to happen. Got to do some experimentation, but I know the background. I'm going to use my coffee filters. Now, these are my designer coffee filters. I will link the video where I show how I color them. So they are colored and they are stamped and they are stenciled on. And they are these bright colors. And when you glue them down with fluid matte medium, they almost get a stained glass look. They're a little brighter and bolder. And I really like using them as collage papers. So before I get going here, I'm just going to basically divide my page into 3 areas, and I'm going to have kind of yellow, orange, red, burgundy-ish. Now you could use any color here, and actually when I got done this, I thought, oh, I could have done blues and greens and made it look like the Northern Lights behind my Inukshooks. So time thought for another day, I could use that. But for this one, I'm going with the yellows, oranges, and reds. Now, these coffee filters, as I said, I've stamped on them, I've stenciled on them, there's marks on them, the colors are there. So this is a quick, easy way to do a background without having to get out any paint. So I am just ripping it up, getting rid of straight edges because I don't like the straight edges, and layering. You could rip them as small as you want, leave them as big, have some big pieces, some small pieces. It really doesn't matter. It adds a lot of texture and pattern to it. So there's my yellow one. Now I'm going kind of more orangey here and just gluing it down, fluid matte medium on my brush and giving a coat underneath and on top. Now the page, this is in my composition book. It has not been gessoed or anything like that. And it's unnecessary for this technique to gesso the page. The fluid matte medium will seal the coffee filter, which comes in handy down the road when I have to undo something that I've done. This, as we go through this tutorial, I do a few things that I, in the end, don't like, and I show you that anything's changeable as you keep going down later on. And I'm going to show you how to rework it. So this coffee filter, if you've got an eagle eye, you'll notice that it was different from the one I showed you. I actually painted this specifically for this. I wanted something a little darker than any coffee filter that I had, so I gave it a coat of quinacridone magenta, red, purples. I'm not sure what color's in there, and there's a slight pattern on there. So if you don't have something in your stash, it's easy to quickly colorize a coffee filter specific for what you need on a certain page. So get the exact color and patterns. So once I get this fully covered with the coffee filter collage papers. I'm going to make sure that I give this a good dry. There's lots of moisture there with the fluid matte medium, and it does need time to dry before I move to the next stage. Now, some of the colors I thought I wanted to change them up a little bit. So I'm just giving them a bit of a wash of color, making it a little bolder yellow, making the reds a little bit redder. Yeah, I'm just playing with the colors as I see fit. So even though you have the coffee filters, if they're not exactly what you want, you can change it after you glue it. So the top one I changed before I glued it down, but these ones I'm adding color to it now, just kind of changing the color. And as you can see, adding color on top of the matte medium, not a problem. So I just want to make this a little bit more orange. I'm not sure. Sometimes, your brain just doesn't, want something different than what you see in front of you. As I'm looking at it now, as I'm doing the voiceover, I like the colors that were there. But you make a decision in the moment as you're doing it and you go with it. And then if you don't like what happens, next time you do it differently. These colors are really close together. You could do colors that are further apart in, more different. So now I'm going to put these Inuksuks on here. These are the metal ones from the wind chime that I'm going to try to turn into a stamp. Not sure how that's going to work. Stay tuned. I decided I wanted to add a little bit more interest to the background. I grabbed this text stencil. I was going to go put the smaller text in, and then I decided, oh, it'd be cool to put the word imagine, dream, travel. So I used my stencil brush and I'm putting that onto the background. Not really thinking this is going to be the sentiment, but I thought the words would be good tie in with the signpost theme from the prompt. So if you've got fine stencils, using a stencil brush, I highly recommend. So now that I have a few words, I decided I wanted some swirls on that top darkest layer. So I grabbed, I believe, Naples yellow, and I'm adding the swirls here. And while I like it, they're not exactly stenciling perfectly nicely. I'm not 100% happy with it, but I keep going. Because sometimes until you get it all put together, you're not sure how it's going to work. Now I grabbed this stencil from Stamperia, or stamp from Stamperia, and I'm stamping with black acrylic paint on it. I'm having a little bit of trouble here. It's not exactly stamping 100%. I'm putting more paint on it, pressing a little harder. This is a relatively easy page. It's just I seem to be struggling a bit. And some days are like that. Just don't give up. I just wanted to add more interest. So I'm putting the Nookshuks back on, and then I'm going to attempt putting white acrylic paint on the one side of this metal Inukshuk. I'm trying to put it on fairly thick because I want it to transfer. So I'm figure brayering it on is the easiest way. Then this is just white acrylic paint, positioning it, and then I'm just pressing hard down so it makes good adhesion or good connection. So I get a good transfer, a good stamp. Well, I'm really happy with that. Cleaning off the stamp, and then I'm going to continue with the second and third Inukshuk. Using an odd number always looks better. 1 looked a little too small on the page, 3 looked good. So I'm pressing down here, and it didn't quite transfer. And I realize that if I put it back on, I get a little bit better. But I realize that because it's metal and it's very imperfect, some of them will transfer ease better than others. So I'm going to look more carefully at them. But there's a workaround. Putting it on a couple times, putting a little bit more paint, pressing harder, gave me a good stamp. And then to fill in some of the gaps, I just grabbed my liner brush and thinned the paint, white paint out just a smidge, and just filling in those gaps that were left from a less than perfect stamp. As I'm doing this, I'm realizing that I bet there could be some interesting things using the Inukshuk on a gel plate. So stay tuned for that video. Play around with it, see what I can do with this unusual mark maker. So I really like how the Inukshuks are standing out. But I didn't like the words. Of course, some of the words are hidden behind the Inukshuk, so I grabbed a baby wipe and I'm very gently rubbing off those words. So I'm undoing it. Now, the reason I'm able to do this is the coffee filter was glued down with fluid matte medium. That and I put it on the top. That sealed the paper, allows me to pull off any paint or anything that I get on that I don't want. So very carefully, I was able to remove all that stenciling, those word stencils, and get rid of it. Then I grab my angle brush and I'm doing some shading inside of the Inukshuk just to make it a little darker, make the Inukshuk stand out a little bit more from the background. And I'll do a little bit more later. I do a little bit here, and then I come back and I do more down the road. There, my white paint wasn't quite dry, so I got to clean it up. Like I said, I was just today when I was creating. Not even a bad day of creating in the studio is better than a good day doing housework. So back to my thinking about doing it in blues and greens and yellows and different colors in the background. I'll definitely play with it. At this point, I decided, you know what? I don't like those swirls. It just didn't sit right with me. So I'm grabbing some quinacridone magenta, some alizarin crimson, some cadmium red, and just painting over those swirls, knocking them back, basically getting rid of what I didn't like. So it's if you don't like something, if it's not working, don't be afraid to push it back. Do a wash of color. So here I'm liking the color. I'm adding a little bit of purple to that. And then I come back and I'm adding, I think it's Prussian blue in here. Or in a minute, I'll be doing that. It was too close to the middle color, so I needed to darken it. And here, this is where I'm adding the Prussian blue or the purple. I think it's not quinacridone magenta, dioxazine purple. I'm just adding that and it's darkening that up, making it a little bit more distinct from the middle layer. and then giving it a dry. And adding a little bit more, darkening it up. The swirls that I stenciled in there, you can still see them. They are texturized because they were acrylic paint, so they were a little bit above that. So you can still see them in real life, but they didn't overtake. I just felt that they were competing too much with the focal image of the Nookshuk. Then I had decided to grab a script stamp and I'm putting some black acrylic paint on it and stamping with that. And that's just putting another layer, some more pattern. Remember, there was some pattern and color on the coffee filter, but you don't have to take it as it is. You can tweak it, make it fit the page you are actually using it with. And you can do that with scrapbook papers or any kind of collage papers. What's in the stash is just the starting point. You can add to it. And I grabbed gold and I thought gold would look good with that same script stamp in the darker top part. And I like the idea of bling up there. You can't really make out that it's script. It's just more of a mark than anything, but I really like the effect of it. And I like that the bottom one has the same stamp as the top, so they kind of work together and makes for a cohesive page. If you were doing lighter colors in the background, you would stamp the Inukshuk or your focal image with maybe black, and then you'd get that contrast. But I thought black wouldn't show up with the darker colors that I have going on here. So I'm liking the bling, but I decide that I want more bling. So I grab my gold splatter paint and I open it up. Now, these containers aren't completely airtight and the paint tends to thicken over time. So I'm just going to add water to it, give it a stir, and we got perfect splatter paint. I do a lot of splattering, so I have black, white, and gold in these containers, and I use my fan brush to splatter. And it shows up, the splatters show up more on the darkest part, less on the other part. Grab my angle brush and I am shading around the page, edging the page with that black. .9% of my pages, I think, get this treatment. It always just finishes the page. And then I'm adding a little bit more shading inside the Inukshuk. I only did one side before and I decided, no, I'm going to do two, just to make it stand out a little bit more. Then the division that I have, I'm just adding a little bit of shading on there to make it stand out a little bit more. And I like how that worked. I need to stamp the sentiment. Now, the Inukshuk marks the way. I thought I could put "we were here," but I chose to stamp with my wooden blocks with white acrylic paint "the way." So the prompt was signpost. And while I was going to use the more traditional signs that we see pointing us in directions, this presented itself, and it was a different take on the prompt. So wherever a prompt takes you is the right direction. It can be very literal, it can be more abstract. As long as it makes sense to you, it makes sense. I did try stamping on the bottom part with the black acrylic paint, and that didn't work. So that got erased and that footage was lost or deleted. So check out the video on how to make your own DIY colored coffee filters. And until next time, go get creative.